once again, it's an Old Testament scripture. Comment number 5 was that women shouldn't have authority to teach over a man. They are to be silent. Well, there's a lot of confusion among this, even with Christians, for one. But it's a matter of knowing how to correctly interpret scripture rather than just reading the scripture and running off and saying, well, see, women are supposed to be quiet in church. They're not supposed to be ministers. They're not supposed to be pastors. They can't do that kind of thing. Also, I don't see where it says any place that this is a sin. You know, I'm going to get into the scripture that she's referring to, but it doesn't say that women teaching over men are a sin. It doesn't say that. It doesn't say that you're going to hell if you were to do that. What it actually says is in 1 Timothy 1 Timothy 2, 9 through 14. It says, in like manner, also that the woman adorn herself or themselves in modest apparel, with propriety and moderation, not with braided hair of gold or pearls or costly clothing, but with which is proper for women professing godliness with good works. Let a woman learn in silence and with all submission, and I do not permit a woman to teach or to have authority over a man, but to be in silence. For Adam was formed first, then Eve, and Adam, which was not deceived, but the woman being deceived, fell into transgression. That's the scripture. Doesn't say you're going to hell, doesn't say it was a sin, but somehow Stasie has interpreted it as such. So we must ask ourselves, once again, who's speaking in this passage? Who is the audience? What's going on in the context of this, such that these statements are being made? And to answer those first two questions, and part of the third one is found by looking at the beginning of the book. Once again, if we look at everything and read what's going on in 1 Timothy 1 through 2, we see that Paul is writing to Timothy. Paul is a mentor in ministry to Timothy. Timothy is a young pastor, and he's getting some wisdom and some knowledge from Paul. Further on, we see that this entire letter that is written is an instruction to Timothy on how to deal with problems that Paul has heard that Timothy is having in his church. There are multiple scriptures that indicate that women have authority or have had authority over men, and God didn't have a problem with it. In Acts 18, 24 through 26, it talks about a woman named Priscilla, a woman who expounded or taught unto him, Apollos is the person that he's talking about, a man, a way of the Lord more perfectly. So she taught this man of God about God. In Luke 2, 36 and through 38, it talks about Anna, who is a prophetess, who spoke at the temple to all them who look for redemption in Jerusalem. And I'm pretty sure that she was talking to some men as well as some women, because she was talking to people that came to the temple. Acts 10:34 lets us know that God is not a respecter of persons. He is not saying, well, this person can minister and that person can't based on their gender. That he's not a respecter of person. So why is Paul telling Timothy that he doesn't allow a woman to teach or have authority over men and that they need to be silent? That's the question. Well, it goes back to the problems that Timothy was having with these women, or these particular women in general. Verse 11 reads, let a woman learn in silence with all submission. That suggests to me that there were some women that were not learning in silence. Now you have to think about it this way. If you go to a movie, and you're sitting there, you're trying to enjoy the show, and people are around you talking and making noise, it's kind of hard to enjoy. It's kind of hard to be in an atmosphere of learning when somebody around you is being disruptive or being talking out of turn or things of that sort. So, you know, you think about it. If you're in class and if you've got a teacher that's trying to teach the lesson, and then you've got a student or somebody else to decide that they wanted to get up and start teaching the lesson, or they wanted to start talking about that, you know, that's not what they believe. They're being disruptive in the service or in the actual classroom. You have to think about how much learning can you get in a situation like that. You know, if you've got some questions, you bring the questions up afterwards. Not saying that you can't bring up questions, but in a environment like church, that's not the environment that you start asking questions in the middle of a sermon, that you start, you know, being disruptive. You think about what happens when people, you have situations where protesters come, you know, and, you know, there's some event going on and you've got protesters. Usually the police remove those protesters so that the other people can enjoy. So although Paul's comments are directed at women in Timothy's church, I highly doubt that he would have condoned any men that were acting in a disrespectful way of an authority figure while he or she was teaching also. So this is not a sexist scripture, but it's just one that's universal to both sexes, that unruly behavior is not accepted in the church. Let's see. StasieDark's comment number 6, that David decapitated Goliath. It's true. All you gotta do is read the scripture. I'm not sure why people don't necessarily teach it in Sunday school, but it's true. The background on this story is that there was going to be a battle between the Israelites and the Philistines. And rather than have thousands of men die on both sides, Goliath came out and said, look, why don't you send out your best guy to fight me? We'll do a one-on-one, and the winner wins the battle. Sounds cool. You don't have a whole bunch of loss of life. You're just going to have one person that's basically going to die. And so the winner of the battle, that's the winner. That's whose army won. And as it turns out, all the Israelite men were very afraid because Goliath was a giant. And so the king of Israel tried to motivate the people, his army, to fight. He said, well, you know what? To the man who gets up here and kills Goliath, I'm going to give you my daughter's hand in marriage. I'm going to make you rich, and you're not going to have to pay taxes anymore. You know, David was there. He just happened to be there. He was bringing supplies to his brothers, basically. And he heard what the king said. And so he said, well, hey, why don't you give me a go? Nobody else wants to go. I'll go fight him, you know. And so the king basically tried to talk David out of it. But eventually, you know, David tells him how he's killed other animals in the past, and that he can handle himself, and that he wants to give a shot at it. Give him a shot. And so the king allows David to go forth. David was, greatly overmatched in physical size and realized that he couldn't fight Goliath in a hand-to-hand battle. So what he needed was a missile. And what he did is he promptly used his sling and a stone, and he knocked Goliath off of his feet, and then he takes Goliath's sword out and cuts off his head. While it's not pretty, war never is pretty. So I know some people, talk about the Bible and the violence, but war is never pretty, whether it be in the Bible or whether it not be in the Bible. But you got one person dead versus thousands of people dead. I don't know what sounds better to you. Her comment number 7 is that the Bible teaches about hate and killing everyone. Well, no, the Bible, no Bible scriptures were given here. So I'll just speak briefly in general. Yeah, the Bible does speak about war, and however, it doesn't teach racism or anything like that what she mentioned. The Bible, when you read the Bible, it talks about nations warring against one another. It never confines this battle to racial differences. Or the superiority of one race over another race. But what it does do is it speaks to nations that did not follow God, that were trying to seek out and to destroy other nations that did follow God. So it sounds like some of the same stuff that we hear about in the Middle East now, with nations that want to totally destroy and obliterate another nation that follows God. StasieDark's comment number 8.